know some of you already know Photoshop, and some indicated you don't really know it at all. So I'm going to try to cover like the basics. If there's something you don't get, try to catch me at the end of the class, or you can go online. Maybe we can, let's try that right now. You can get all kinds of answers on YouTube. And there's something that I haven't actually used before, but people tell me it's really great, is, yeah. Lynda.com tutorials. I haven't used these, but several people told me they're the best there is. You can also go to YouTube, and you can almost put in any specific question you have, and you'll probably find a very specific answer to your question. But here's CS5 tutorial. Basic tools right here. So this is probably free, and maybe if you don't want to spend money on Lynda, you could use this tutorial. Okay, back to Photoshop. So the basic first thing you need to do is open a file. I'm going to close this one because we'll pretend you're starting from scratch. So this is kind of obvious. File, new, and then you get this thing. This is actually very important. Mine right now is set at 300 DPI, and it's 8.5 inches wide and 11 inches high. I want your final presentations to be 11 by 17, so 11 wide. So it's set in inches, and I can just type in 11 and 17. And that makes the drawing size 11 by 17. If I want to change that, I can go back to image size, resolution. You don't really need anything over 300 for this work. Pixels per inch. If you open Photoshop, it might be set at points or some other number. You probably want to go to inches to get it to be 11 by 17. And you just click on this arrow to get that. And you have to say OK. Thank you.
No.
All right, some basic. Now I'm going to open that other image I had up. Something that I just grabbed. There it is. So this is the one I want, and you will have scanned your stuff. I'm going to show you how to scan in a minute. If you've already scanned something and it's a file in a folder, you can just drag that over onto the Open Photoshop, and it'll open in Photoshop. Or the other ways that you probably know, you can right click and say Open With, and then Open with Photoshop. Once you've worked on it in Photoshop, it will automatically become a Photoshop document, and you double click it, it will automatically open in Photoshop after that. So let's just say you've got your concept sketches that you did at the beginning of this project, and you scanned them, and you want to select them so you can put it on your final presentation. If it's on a white background, which it will automatically be if you scan it with a normal scanner, you're going to have to select that and put it in the other file, your presentation. So a lot of times, because I have a tablet PC with a stylus, I use this freehand lasso tool, or I'm using a mouse right now, but this freehand lasso tool basically just goes wherever you drive it, and then when you close it to where you started, you've got a selection, and you can take that selection. If you want to deselect, Control D. So I'm going to use my stylus and use that to select this one. Let's just say this is one of my 10 concept sketches. That was the first thing you were supposed to do. Now, if you're going to put this on a white background, you don't have to be very careful about the selection. But if you're going to put it on some other colored background, you'll see that my selection is very sloppy. It's not going to look very good on any kind of a colored background. Okay, so I've got it selected as a sloppy selection. I can go to the menu and I can say copy. I never do this on, where is it? Edit. Edit. And copy, but I always use Control C. So Control C for copy. And now I go back to my other file, which if I was in CS4, it would show up across the bar on the top. And now Control V to paste. And now I've got this on my 11 by 17 final presentation. And when I did that, it created a layer. There's a layers menu here. The layers menu is extremely important. If you don't know Photoshop, you better get with layers immediately. Every time you paste something on like I just did, it will create a new layer. If your layers aren't showing up when you open Photoshop, you almost always want layers showing because you work with layers a lot. So you go to Window and Layers. See, Layers is already clicked on mine, so it's showing. If you don't see layers, that's what you need to do to get layers. Window and Layers. Now you see over here, the background layer is locked. So if you started off with an image, let's say you opened an existing file that already had an image on it, and you want to change that, and you try to change it, nothing happens because it's locked. So if that's the case, right away, go up here, this little arrow here, this is lots of little secrets under this little arrow right here. Very important ones. Duplicate that layer. I almost always duplicate the background layer anyway. Now I can work with the background layer. I didn't need to in this case because there was nothing on the background. But a lot of times you open an existing one you've already been working on, and there is something on the background. Okay, so we're going back to layer 1. That's the layer that has this sketch on it. If you want to name that layer so you can keep track of them, you can double click on that, and now I can name it truck 1. What happened? The keyboard. Truck 1. You're going to have a lot of concepts, right? So you might want to name your concepts 1 through 10, or however many concepts you. I guess you were asked to do 9 concepts, I think. Okay, you see these little eyeballs here? If I click on that eyeball, it goes away and that layer is no longer visible. It's still there, but I can't see it. So if I want to do anything with that layer, I have to make it visible. And now, and here's zoom in and out, here's the little magnifying glass. I zoomed in so I can work on this some more. To zoom out, the way I do it, I hit the Alt key and that plus sign becomes a negative sign. And so I can zoom in and out. There's other ways you can scroll to be be able to scroll with the thumb wheel. But I always use the Alt key. That's something else you need to know about Photoshop, people, is there's everything you do in Photoshop, there's like 10 different ways to do the same thing. That's one of the reasons it's so confusing. So I'm showing you the way that I happen to find while I'm playing with Photoshop and teaching myself Photoshop. You might find better ways, and please tell me if you know a better way, and I'll learn from you. But okay, so now I brought this in, and I just remembered, oh, Shook told the class that you have to have your name and your project name at the top. So I'm going to show you text right now. There's the T for text. Once you click on the T, the menu at the top changes. It says right now I've got this font, Pickup Script Pro, that's not what I want. I'm going to go to Arial. And then here's the font size here. Here's the font color right here. And it's saying that it's going to be organized with flush left. I could center it or flush right. If I want to change the color, I can click on that font color, and now let's say I don't really want black. Let's say I want cool gray 8 for my font. So I can click anywhere I want, and that changes the color. If I wanted this color, I can just click there. So now I have a different kind of cursor. This is the text cursor, and I just type the project name is going to be Jimmy's Truck. Guess what? Over here on the layer thing, I don't know if you happen to catch that, but it created a new layer. Every time you start typing a new font, it will create a new layer for that. And if I want to change it, I have to go back to that layer. So now let's say I want to put my name, but I don't want it 48 points, so I'm going to knock it down to 24 points. Oops. I was still on that layer, so it changed it.
You mentioned, so if you make any type of text, it's going to go to the same layer continuously, or separate layers per text?
Separate layers every time.
Per text.
What?
Separate layers per text box?
Yes. Well, what just happened just now is I was going to create a new text, and I decided I'm going to change the size, but I was still on that text layer, so it changed the size of that text layer. I go, oops, I didn't want to change that one. So what I have to do is I go back over here to this little home base thing here, this little arrow, and I click on the drawing, and now that first text layer is not active anymore, so I'm going to pick up the T again, and now I'll start a new one. Now I can go to 24 points. And I'll say, put my name on there. I want your project name and your name. Actually, I think I also want the class. So I went and got my T again. I'm still on the Jim Shook text layer. I click right behind Jim Shook, and now I can say DSID22. Now those two aren't lined up, are they? So I want to line them up. So I go to my bar across the top. I just click anywhere on that bar, and I drag down, and I get an alignment tool line. Can you see that? Blue? Yeah, it's blue. And those lines don't show up when you print it out. You can leave them there forever if you want to, as guidelines, and they won't show up when you print. So now I'm going to bring this Jim Shook. Oops, I'm in the background layer. I got to go back. Here's the layer. See, I got to be on that layer. So now I can. Now I can move that one wherever I want. deactivate that layer, I'm gonna click on this arrow again and back on the page, and it went back to the background copy, which is my base, my home base. Okay, so let's go get another image to put on this. I need another concept sketch. So that should still be open. Any questions so far? So I'm gonna select another one off of this drawing. Yours will be a little bit easier because your concept sketches are all separated, they're not married together like these are. Okay, I'm gonna show you another selection tool now. I showed you this one first, which is a freehand selection tool. Now I'm gonna show you the pen tool. This is a lot better for accuracy, but it's slower. So the pen tool is tricky, but I can click, these are straight lines, so it's easy, so I'm just clicking from point to point. But now I've got a curve, so with the pen tool I can click at the end of that curve, and I can drag this curve and make that curve any shape I want. Can you guys see that on the screen? But here's the secret. This is one secret drove me nuts for a while. If you want to keep doing curves and you want to control them, you have to push Alt and click on the last dot that you just created, the last handle, and get rid of one of those handles that you use to change the shape, because if you don't, you've got two handles. You've got one handle coming out of each side of your last dot, and they affect each other. If you don't get rid of the one that's coming out the side that your direction you're going, you try to move that handle and the other one is making it go crazy. And that drove me nuts for the longest time. I found the answer on YouTube. It says Alt-click on the last handle and you'll get rid of that, and then you can control. Why they do that, I don't know. Does anybody know why they made that? Okay, so I can get this whole circle in one pass. See that? I can move that line. Because that's, and put it right next to the edge of that other line. Now what do I do? Huh? And what else? Alt. I put Alt down, I click on that last anchor point, takes that handle away, and now I can control it. If that handle stays there, it's okay if I'm doing straight lines, but it's not okay if I'm trying to do curves. So now I'm going to put that curve around there. Another curve. And you'll see later why I'm being so careful with this. Some of you aren't going to be so careful, and then I'm going to critique your layout because it gets messy. Okay, now I've closed it, but it's not automatically a selection like the last one. As soon as I close the loop, the freehand one, it made a selection that I could save what's in the middle and move it over to the other drawing, right? This time it didn't. I've got to go over here to paths. This is another hidden thing you'll never find if I don't tell you. Paths, and then I go down here to this little dot thing that looks like a selection. I click that. Now it's a selection. If somebody doesn't tell you that, you're going to go, wait a minute, I selected this whole thing with my pen tool and now I can't do anything with it. Now it's a selection. Now I can Control C, save, and I can go to my other drawing. I need to deactivate the pen tool, so I go over to this again. I click on this, How do I paste? Huh? Control V. Oh, that's bigger than I wanted. What am I gonna do? Control T. What?
Hold shift and then put your cursor on the corner and then you can control it. Either do that or you.
But I have to do Control T first. Control T, if I do it from the menu, is transform.
Yeah.
And there's different kinds of transform. The Control T is the base, most commonly used one, right? So as soon as I did Control T, it put this box around the object. And now with Shift, I can make that any size.
And if you hold control, you can change the perspective.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things I can do, but this is the most basic one first. So I wanna make it smaller, so, cause I've got 6 or 9 of these to put in here, so I'm gonna make it smaller. I know I'm gonna have to make this first one smaller, so I go back to layers, I go to truck 1. Where'd truck 1 go?
It's just a T.
What? I Control T that, and I make it smaller. Oops. I move it, hit return. Is this the second truck? Yeah. So the second truck is truck 2. I had to go to that layer to move it. Now, there's a hierarchy to these layers, right? Right now, truck 2 is under T, which is truck 1. So you wanna see what happens if I physically move truck 2 underneath? Oh, it actually goes under, right? But if I move that layer up above truck 1, on the hierarchy of layers, now it's on top, right? So that's something you need to know. So I'm gonna real quick just grab a few more trucks, so it's not too quick because they're all on top of each other here. Okay, here's something else. This layer that I created, remember how I created that layer? Somebody tell me. I mean this truck, how I grabbed it? Pen tool. Tabs. The very bottom, right. So I click on tabs, I see this thing and it makes it. There's other ways too. But that's the way I'm showing you today. I don't want it totally confusing. But let's say I want to save that selection because, and I do this all the time when I'm doing drawings in Photoshop, I save selections. That means all I'm saving is that little line that's crawling around that you see there. So I go up here to select, save selection, and this selection is truck 2. My keyboard was working good for a while. So that selection now I can go back to anytime I want to. So I saved it and I call it truck 2. So I do Control D to deselect. Now that selection's gone. But if I ever need it again, I go up here to select. I load selection. I look for truck 2. There it is. I say okay. Now it's selected again. I use that a lot when I'm doing renderings. If I make a selection to put a color in or a gradation, and I keep working and I go, oh, you know what? That gradation is not as dark as I wanted. I go back, grab that selection, and I can paint in that selection again and make it darker. You don't really need it for this project, creating the presentation. Okay, so I'm gonna grab one more truck here. Here's another selection tool here. This lasso, you see there's 2 other selection tools here. There's polygon lasso tool and a magnetic lasso tool. The magnetic one is kind of tricky. And then there's another one right next to it here called the magic wand. A magic wand will work if I have a drawing like this one that's got a continuous line all the way around it. The magic wand then can select it, but if there's any break in that line, the the magic wand will get confused. So let's just click on this, the magic wand, and this one will probably work. So it's selected a bunch of other lines too. So up here, there's a tolerance thing, I can change that, but I hardly ever use a magic wand because I almost always have trouble with it. So I deselected, I'll try it one more time. I changed this from 60 to 30 tolerance. Now I've got even more stuff, so. I see people use the magic wand, but I don't use it. This is the polygon lasso tool I do use. It's kind of a cheap and dirty substitute for the pen tool. So it's a point-to-point click. It's always a straight line. So if you have a curve, you have to do multiple clicks. But sometimes it's faster and easier than the pen tool. So that's another option you have, a clicking click. Oh, I've got this round thing, kind of wish I had the pen tool. So I just keep clicking multiple times. We'll see later why this could be a problem. You guys getting bored yet?
I was wondering, is it possible, can you switch between different sources?
Different selection tools while you're in the middle of a selection?
Yeah.
Not that I know of. I don't think so. Good question. So I just selected this other little truck. I'm gonna save that selection, save it, truck 3. Well, that's the same truck, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Somebody tell me. Control C, I go back to my other drawing. Control V, and I want to make it look like a different truck, so I'm going to go Edit, Transform, Flip, Horizontal. So at least it's pointing another way, it kind of looks like a different truck now. All right, how do I make it smaller?
Control T.
Yeah, Control T, it's active, now what? Grab the handle.
Shift.
Oh, look. I grabbed the handle.
Do you have to hold like shift or alt or something to get
Yeah.
it unlocked?
I have to put shift down if I want it to transform proportionally. But let's say because this is the same truck as the one on the left, I want it to look different. I'm gonna go ahead and stretch it out this way, make it look like a different truck.
Control shift. Control shift.
And that layer is now called layer 1. I'm gonna double click that, call it truck 3. So you keep doing that for all your drawings. Now, last week I showed you presentation and there was a graphic shape behind it, right? So I'm going to show you how to create a graphic shape. There's actually a lot of ways, but I'm going to use the pen tool and I'm going to say, I want to start here on this line and I want to have kind of a sweeping shape, alt, click. Actually tonight you guys were supposed to do thumbnails. I think we're still going to do thumbnails. You really should have done a thumbnail because I don't really have a good plan for this. I should have a plan and I get that plan by doing a thumbnail. So I'm kind of faking it. Backspace, I want that line vertical, so I don't like it, so backspace takes me back to where I was. Click on that handle again, still not vertical. Back, so I'm gonna go over here and bring the guideline over so I can do a better job of getting it vertical. Okay, I close that loop. How do I make it a selection? I used the pen tool, I went all the way around and I clicked on where I started.
Oh,
Huh?
pass.
It has.
Circle
That
in the
goofy
middle.
thing on the bottom. If I wanna save that, I'm gonna save selection, I'm gonna call it, background. Okay, so now we're gonna start painting. Go back to layers. I'm gonna go to my airbrush. Here's the brush tool. There's a brush tool and a pencil tool. I only use the brush tool. And I want to airbrush. So I click up here where it says brush, and there's this little arrow, and that shows me my brush menu. And I want one that's soft all the way around, that's airbrush. In order to go back to work, I have to click on this menu bar here to get rid of that. Oh, my airbrush is way too small. You see the little dot? So I changed the airbrush size by using the bracket key. The close, it's like parentheses, except it's square, right? So the right bracket makes it bigger, woohoo, and the left bracket makes it smaller. Now, if I paint in there now, what color is it gonna be?
Black. Red, whatever color you have in palette.
Yeah, that color right there. If I wanna change that color, I go over here and I can change it to whatever color I want. But I kinda like that color, so I'm gonna say okay. Now, if I paint right now, it's gonna be very, very dark. It's like totally saturated, whatever that color was. Does anybody know how I can change that?
Your opacity is another %.
Yeah, opacity and flow. So, if I'm just wanting a light gray background, I'll knock both of these down to roughly 30%. And when I'm doing airbrush, which is equivalent of using the chalk in the pad, the general rule, if you wanna simulate the chalk on a pad, set both of these around 30%. So now I can paint that. And maybe I want to get a gradation. Now, there's other ways to get gradations. But I like this way because I have total control over it. And I'm using it like an airbrush. If I want this darker up here, I can go over it again. And it's 30 plus 30 is 60. So it's 30 twice. 30 opacity twice is equivalent to 60. So I keep going over it, I can get it as dark as I want. So now I deselect. How do I deselect?
Control D.
Yep, Control D. So there's my little graphic background. But guess what? This one truck is buried in it. Why is that?
His layer isn't in the correct
Yeah,
order.
like that layer is below the background layer that I just created. So I can move that truck up or I can move the background down.
Now you painted it the same way.
Oh no, I painted in the same layer. That was a mistake. Okay, so what do you do when you make a mistake?
Undo.
You can do Control Shift. What else can you do?
Control Z.
Yeah, history. Go up here to window again, and history's not clicked. So I'm gonna click history. Now I've got another menu here. And this is so wonderful because look, it shows me everything I just did for the last like 20 or 30 moves. So I can go back up here. Save selection. Close the history. before, I automatically made new layers by bringing stuff in. Now I'm gonna make a new layer without bringing stuff in.
Control shift N.
Control,
There's
right.
a little icon on your layers.
Control Shift N, but I go up here to this little arrow and I say new layer.
That works.
Okay. I'm gonna call that graphic. Oh, come on. I think I've got a little screw that rolls around in my keyboard and shorts out every once in a while. So now that's a separate layer, and if I paint on it, as long as that layer is below the trucks, it won't paint on the trucks. This is, at 300 DPI and 11 by 17, this is actually a pretty big file, so it's bogging my computer down a little bit. Okay, so now if I go in and I'm gonna deselect that, I zoom in and you'll see how bad some of my selections was. Like, see this? That doesn't look good to have the white edge around that concept.
Which one?
See around here?
Oh.
So that was truck 1, I think, that's T, as I recall. Yeah. So I wanna get rid of that, so I'm just gonna, right now, I'm cleaning it up with the this lasso tool. I just selected that white area I want to get rid of, and I'm going to hit delete. So I cleaned that up. Another way to clean it up would be with the eraser. This is the eraser over here. And the eraser's set at 100% right now. I can also set the eraser at different opacity and flow. So this is an airbrush eraser. It's got kind of a soft edge. So that's another way to clean up bad selection. Okay, so I did quite a bit of work right now, so I better save this sucker because every once in a while stuff crashes. Okay, so there's another way to put gradations, and most students end up doing it this way. I'm going to load that selection again. How do I load the selection?
Go to paths.
I saved the path, which is the current background. How do I go back and get it? I want to use it again now. I want to try a different background. Let's see, I didn't like that one, but I like the shape, but I didn't like the gray.
So select, load, selection.
Select, load selection.
On here.
Background sweep. There it is again. So I don't use this, but a lot of people use it. I don't even know where it is. Here it is under the paint gradient tool. So you can So that, you see how fast I put the gradient in there? So I'm gonna Control Z, go back and show you that again. I click, this is the gradient tool, and it's underneath the paint bucket, right? So that's something else about Photoshop. You would never know to look for the gradient tool underneath the paint bucket. The paint bucket is a fill tool. If I use the paint bucket, put it in there, it'll fill that whole thing with whatever color I have. So that's like you just pour paint in and it fills it out. But the gradient tool, when I click on the paint bucket and then I click on the gradient tool, it gives me this cursor, and I can run that cursor wherever I want to. Let's say I want it to gradate in that path right there, and it gradated it in that path. And then I can control that gradation up here with these controls. I can get different kinds of gradients. I don't use this, so I don't know how to. There's a lot of stuff you can do to manipulate this, but maybe you can learn that yourself. I much prefer to airbrush in, because I have total control over it that way, but it does take a little bit longer. Where's my other truck? Right. Truck 3. How come I'm missing a truck? Truck 3, where's T truck?
It's under T, that's it.
Oh, I put the gradient right on that.
Yeah.
See how, hey guys, I just proved to you why layers is so important. You really need to keep track of layers. It's the second time I did it tonight, right? I was playing with gradient and I didn't notice I was on one of the truck layers. So I just wiped out my truck. Right? That's the second time I did that tonight. I needed to make sure I was creating a new background gradient layer. So what's my one way I can get out of that?
History.
Yeah. I'll put the history. You can leave the history open if you want to. So I go back there. I got my truck back. So I'm not going to do this whole thing. I think you're getting the idea. But I'm going to go open. Where did I find those trucks? Let's say I'm going to put the final rendering in, and one of these is the final rendering. So I'm going to select this as one of the, as the final rendering. What are my choices for selecting this? Hello? How do I select this?
That's for polygon last.
Yeah. So I'm gonna use a pen tool this time. I'm gonna be a little bit sloppy because I don't want to make you guys wait too much. I can use a pen tool just like the polygon lasso tool too. It'll do straight lines between each selection if I don't use the handle to curve it. So today's Photoshop lesson is not about drawing in Photoshop or fixing the mistakes like I told you earlier today. Some of the mistakes mistakes that were on the wall. I said you could fix those in Photoshop. We'll do that later. Right now, I wanna give you enough information that you can, lay out your final presentation. Okay, I went all the way around, paths, make path, copy, so I'm gonna save as copy. Hopefully it'll let me save, it didn't let me save before. Let me save. And now I'm gonna flatten this image so that all the, there's only one layer. Flatten image. Now I should be able to get that. I didn't get it. That layer's locked. Duplicate layer. Control C. Control V. Is it there? Maybe it's just really small. I hate it when stuff like this happens in demo tonight. I can't figure out why I can't get that. Contrast this game again. Edit. Copy. I'm gonna make a new layer and see if I can paste it on this one. Yeah. So I should be able to paste it over here. There it is. Why didn't it go before? Okay, so that's what you need to do to lay out your whole presentation. Hopefully that's enough to get you started. And what we want to do the rest of the day today is thumbnails, like do 3 thumbnail sketches of the kind of graphic background you might want and the layout of your all your drawings you need. I'll let you use half of your concepts, at least 9 concepts. Then your final 3 have to be there. Your exploded view, your explanatory view, and your final rendering.
On the same page?
Yeah.
Not the orthogonal,
What?
not the orthogonal. It's explanatory, which is with the arrows. Then we had orthographic
Oh yeah,
and orthogonal.
orthographic.
And the cutaway, right?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Pretty much everything.
A lot of
Let's see if I can find some more examples. Okay, here's one from previous semester. It's horizontal. I'm asking everybody to do vertical this time. So you see this person decided to use horizontal lines as the graded organizing background. And it's got the concepts. You did 2 levels of concepts. You did line drawings first, and then you did shaded. So this person's got the line drawings across the top, shaded ones across the bottom. The final 3, the component layout drawing here, exploded view here, explanatory here, orthographics, colored orthographics here, and the final rendering right here. And that's not on D2L, so if I remember tomorrow, and if I have time, I'll put that on D2L. Here's another one. So this person did a pretty fancy graphic background here. Be careful your graphic background doesn't detract. I don't think this one does, but I have seen some that really, really do detract from the drawings. they overpower the drawings, make sure it doesn't do that. So here's their two levels of concepts, the line drawings, the shaded ones, the final three, explanatory, colored other graphics, component layout, final rendering.
Should we make the one that we turned in today like the biggest?
Absolutely. Good question. So their size is somewhat in ratio to their importance, right? The preliminary concepts are the smallest. Concepts are the smallest. Then the final three, and then these explanatory, exploded, and where's exploded?
There's
I don't see exploded. And the color or the graphics are next level of importance, and the final rendering is the most important, is the biggest. That's the glamour, we call it the glamour shot, right? That's the ta-da, big, bold, important. Here's another one. I don't recommend you put a little happy face with a thumbs up. I get you good. I think that's all. That's all the examples I have right now. So this is a slightly different assignment, but the same. This one, the way they arranged it, the concepts, see these are the final three down here.
Is that, is it for?
This is a scanner.
It's 128.
It's
125?
603.
What?
603, IDS 603.
So they're not creative enough? Why did they put the number?
Tommy's doing this right now.
They could have come up with a more original name.
It's a scanner, you put your paper inside there, and this is a scanning bar right here. The scanning bar tracks around this track all the way around and scans the paper,
It's 125.
then you pull it out.
So is it like a portable scanner?
No, it's
Really?
really easy out kind of thing.
I was thinking we were in it too.
There's another one. Here's all the concepts, where's the final three?
This is a pretty good one, close to you.
I guess this is the final three here, 1, 2, 3, 4, I guess. Explanatory,
Yeah, it's good.
I don't see exploded view. Glamour shot.
I can't hear you all the Mexican food.
Take your flatulence back.
There's another one, concepts, explanatory views here, orthographics, I don't see exploded view. Final three right here.
No, exploded right there. Dead center.
Huh?
Exploded with dead center slightly down right there.
Oh, right there, yeah, you're right. There's another one. Not very good. There's another one.
It's almost too much.
There's another one. This is kind of a nice background. The way they did the background, they've got the kind of the ripple effect, and then they. Kyle, hang on. And then they whited out some circles in that ripple effect to give a background for some of their other drawings. It's pretty nice. think this one I probably asked for scale and context as part of the presentation.
Would that be, would that be an acceptable layout vertically to have your concepts on like the left side and then have a big final and then your other ones slightly smaller?
I much prefer like a timeline from beginning to end of the project.
Okay.
Whether it's left to right or top to bottom or left top corner to lower right corner or S like this, but I like it to go from concepts to final 3 to design development to glamour shop.
And then growing the scale as you
Yeah,
go?
exactly, yeah.
That's good fucking questions. No, it's not.
I'm surprised you knew what to ask considering how much talking you were doing back there.
It's all Kyle.
That wasn't Kyle?
No, that's like, no, it was.
Here's some more.
We're talking about related utility.
So that one already.
What is that?
It's a print wheel. It's a rolling printer.
Oh.
The 19th century.
What if they take over the world?
So you can stick like a book on the ground and just
Oh,
roll
here's
the book.
This is a toaster.
Wait,
It's a pretty cool toaster.
Oh, wow.
So you toast, and then you can lay your toast on here to keep it warm if you're not gonna eat the toast right away.
You only do one piece of bread at a
I forgot it was like wine lit
Concepts. Scanner. This guy's a senior designer at Microsoft right now.
Looks like it.
Oh, damn. Why didn't he start his own Microsoft?
Microsoft already said.
RIP Steve Jobs.
This girl's working at Samsung in Korea right now. Okay, is that enough examples?
Yes, are some of them on the D2L?
What?
Are some of those on the D2L or is
Are
it?
I don't think so. Maybe there is. Okay, scan, file. If you have a scanner connected, you should be able to go to import. And out here, you'll see the printers and scanners that are attached to the computer. So I don't have one here, but you would just click on like the Canon or whatever scanner you want to scan on. And that scanner software will come up. Yeah, it's not coming up here because there's no scanner attached. And it'll either say preview or new scan, and either one of those will work.
So it's import, you scan it and bring it in.
Yeah. And it'll come right into Photoshop. Now, if your scanner, if you're at home and your scanner wasn't set up properly, Photoshop might not be able to recognize your scanner. In that case, most scanners have a button on it that says scan. If you push the scan button, it'll send it, you have to watch, it'll tell you where it's sending it in your computer. It won't go to Photoshop. It'll go to a file, usually users, documents, photos, someplace like that. And some scanners you'll have to decide if it's a JPEG or a PDF file that's going to create. I recommend JPEG in that case. Or PDF will also work.